Discover the incredible moment a black woman transformed rejection into an unexpected blessing. Angela stared at the letter. Its stark white envelope felt heavier than the weight of her aspirations. Nestled within was a cold rejection from a prestigious law school, the once hopeful words morphing into a hard slap against her dreams. She clutched her phone, expecting a text of encouragement from her mother, but instead felt the suffocating silence that amplified her self-doubt. The buzzing office around her faded, the laughter of attorneys mingling with clients now a jarring backdrop to her aching heart. She was just a receptionist, doomed to shuffle papers and answer calls while the war of her ambitions raged on in silence. Doubt spiraled through Angela's mind. How could she explain to her family, who sacrificed so much, that she wasn't enough? A perfect daughter, a diligent worker. Why was that never enough to grant her the right to dream? She felt small, caged in her cubicle, surrounded by mock displays of success that now felt so distant. She wondered if she would be forever defined by this moment, this cruel twist of fate that made the dreams of her youth feel hollow and taunting. As the day dragged on, her fingers mindlessly flicked through files, but her soul sought solace elsewhere. It was then she noticed her grandmother's worn journal, tucked away on a dusty shelf, almost forgotten in the chaos of her workplace. Eagerly, she reached for it, her fingers brushing against the tattered pages filled with stories, brave tales of resilience and tenacity. Each word sparked a flicker of something deep within her, a reminder that struggles could give birth to strength, transforming pain into purpose. With every story she read, Angela felt a shift. The words ignited her latent desire to write, a calling she had buried under the weight of expectation. She wrote fervently, crafting narratives that sliced through societal prejudices, weaving in her own voice alongside her family's legacy. The pain of rejection morphed into words that demanded to be heard, and her experiences became the ink on the pages. The local newsletter took notice of her newfound talent. In the echoing hallways where she felt invisible, conversations began to shift. Angela was no longer just the receptionist. She became the catalyst for dialogue about racial injustice. This recognition was intoxicating, yet it brought a new layer of dread. Could she remain true to herself in a world so quick to silence? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The walls of her journey were closing in again, only now they were lined with unfamiliar expectations of being a voice for others. Doubling down on her writing felt like a commitment that could either transcend the rejection or reinforce her invisibility. A retired lawyer, once an undeniable champion for justice, reached out, offering mentorship that both thrilled and terrified her. Could she share her raw truths under his guidance? Or would it all be another way to grapple with the rejection she faced? As the pressure mounted and her first case loomed ahead, Angela stood at a precipice, poised to confront the very institutions that deemed her unworthy. Her pulse quickened. Would she rise to meet the challenges before her, or would she, too, succumb to the world's insistence to silence her? The echoes of her past banged against her heart, a tidal wave of dreams, doubts, and the resolve of a woman eager to reclaim her narrative. Would this be the moment that defined her, or the one that held her captive? Just as the clock ticked down, she took a deep breath, ready to speak, yet consumed by a frantic fear of faltering. The faint smell of printer ink and the sound of ringing phones buzzed around Angela as she prepared for her meeting with the retired lawyer. He had invited her to discuss her writing and potential steps forward, and the prospect filled her with a mixture of excitement and dread. This was her chance to engage the world in issues she held dear, yet the fear of failure gnawed at her, threatening to undermine her newfound courage. Entering the cafe where they agreed to meet, she spotted him seated at a small corner table, flipping through a folder of documents. He looked up, his eyes glinting with the same spirit of determination that had drawn her to him in the first place. "Angela!" he exclaimed, his voice warm. "It's so good to finally meet you. I've read some of your pieces. You have an incredible talent." Hearing those words was like a gust of fresh air sweeping through her suffocating hesitation. As they sat down, she felt a rush of hope mixed with trepidation. In this moment, she was no longer just a receptionist, but a writer, an advocate with something to say. "What led you to write about social issues?" he inquired, leaning in with genuine interest. Angela stammered for a moment, grappling with how to articulate the weight her heritage and experiences carried. Was it worth exposing her vulnerabilities to another? "Growing up, I felt like my voice didn't matter," she began cautiously, her voice shaking slightly. "But through writing, I've been able to express the thoughts I've held inside for so long. Thoughts about identity, dreams, and rejection. I want to show others that they can speak up too." The mentor listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. His own words emerged slowly, as if he were carefully choosing the right stones to build a bridge to understanding her. Sometimes, turning pain into power can inspire others to see their own strength. We need more voices like you in the legal world. Angela fought back a swell of emotion, a mix of pride and determination. There was weight to what he was saying, a call for accountability, not just for herself, but for the community she represented as well. The realization that her pain could translate into purpose began to crystallize into a clearer vision for the future. Could she truly wield her narrative as a tool for change? "The upcoming case revolves around a systemic injustice that's been overlooked," he continued, prompting her to envision her role in a larger fight. "I want you to consider contributing your writing to it." Her heart raced as the implications of his words sank in. This was not just an echo of her failure. It was a chance to rewrite her narrative, a fundamental shift she needed to embrace. But what if her voice failed to resonate? What if she missed the chance to make an impact? Angela's inner conflict raged fiercely. Here lay an opportunity to confront her stagnant self-image, but with it came the potential for renewed rejection, the very thing that had haunted her dream for so long. "Can you do it?" His question sliced through her hesitation, challenging her to confront the essence of her fears. As she remained silent, weighing her self-doubt against her yearning for change, a new determination ignited within her. The moment of truth demanded not only her voice, but her willingness to let it echo across the chambers of injustice. With a deep breath and newfound resolve, she nodded slowly. "I can do it." The choice revealed itself as not just a verbal affirmation, but a commitment to transcend her own limitations. As they discussed the next steps, Angela felt the weight of her grandmother's stories behind her, each tale pushing her further into her own courage. Yet questions lingered in her mind, simmering beneath the surface. Would she be prepared for the public scrutiny that came with being a voice? Could she navigate the treacherous waters of advocacy without losing herself along the way? With the pressure building and her responsibilities looming, Angela prepared to throw herself into the world she yearned to influence. What lay ahead would test her in ways she could not yet fathom. Would that pressure forge her into a stronger advocate, or would it break her down? The uncertainty only heightened her resolve as she rose from the table, now aware that stepping into this new role could redefine everything she thought she knew about herself. For the first time, she was ready to embrace what lay ahead, standing at the brink of transformation. But as she walked away, The shadow of doubt whispered insistently. Would claiming her voice mean relinquishing the comfort of silence? Back in her small apartment, the weight of the cafe conversation settled heavily on Angela's mind. The walls felt as if they were closing in, echoing the voices of all those who had dismissed her in the past. Yet, there was an ember of courage now flickering within her, responding not just to words of encouragement, but to a deeper self-recognition. She sat on the edge of her bed, contemplating the moment she'd agreed to contribute to a fight larger than herself, a fight that could reshape her career and the way she interacted with her own identity. Determined to transform that spark into a flame, Angela started the day with purpose. She pulled out her worn journal and sat cross-legged on the floor, the familiar pages welcoming her latent energy. The alarm began to tick on her small wall clock, yet she felt frozen in time. Fingers poised over the empty page, heart racing like a wild stallion. She needed to articulate her thoughts, her ideas on injustice, but what if her words lacked the power that would ignite a movement? She wrote slowly at first, focusing on the nuances of her feelings. The thrill of her childhood dreams clashed with the oppressive shadows of doubt. Writing was no longer just a private refuge. It had become a battleground, a place where her experiences could interlace with the struggles of others. Each stroke of the pen transformed her feelings into a poignant narrative, revealing layers of anger, hope, and resilience. Yet the further she delved, the more disruptive memories bubbled to the surface. Her school days, when peers labeled her as the quiet one, the profound sense of isolation that had draped over her like a heavy cloak. It made her wonder how those who had shaped her childhood still haunted her present, even in the light of newfound determination. Fighting back tears, Angela reminded herself that she had a purpose. Her narrative could reflect not just her journey, but also educate others. But with such weighty responsibility came fear. The voices of doubt yanked at her resolve, whispering memories of failure and rejection that had haunted her since childhood. As she returned her focus to the page, she began to carve out the structure of her piece. The legal case she would join loomed in her mind, an opportunity to interlace her story with factual, systemic injustice. With every word, she reflected on how she could effectively articulate issues that had remained silent. Time sped up around her, the clock ticking mercilessly, reminding her of the impermanence of these moments. With the sunlight pouring through her window, illuminating the dust particles suspended in the air, Angela felt the urge to transcend herself. She envisioned her words breaking out into the larger world, becoming the very voice she'd longed to hear throughout her life. Then it struck her. Had she been holding herself back all this time, fearing that speaking up would only bring about more rejection? As she crafted her argument, framing what she had to say in a manner that resonated not just with her own hurt, but with the institution's failures, a thrill unlike any she had felt surged through her. Writing now felt cathartic, profound, and above all, empowering. Yet the looming dread crept back in, brushing against the edges of her newfound confidence. Somewhere within her, the realization made itself known. Preparation would ease her fear, yet she had to brace for the inevitable scrutiny that came with bringing her perspective to a broader audience. She had to be ready to confront the pushback, not just from the outside, but from within. With each passing day leading up to her decisive meeting about the case, Angela drafted and redrafted, nurturing her developing voice like a fragile plant in a storm. Yet deep within, she grappled with questions that redefined her understanding of failure. Could vulnerability truly function as a catalyst for change? As she anchored herself in this journey of self-discovery, anticipation twisted into anxiety. She was on the precipice of stepping into a world that demanded she had more to offer, yet still held potent shadows of self-doubt. The path was becoming clearer, yet she was constantly recalibrating her emotional response to this new identity. Determined, she stood up and paced the room, going over her materials again and again. This was not merely about her. It was about those left unheard in sterile courtrooms and loveless offices, tangled in bureaucracy. But could she articulate their pain convincingly enough? With her heart racing and her hands slowly forming fists, Angela knew she was entering a pivotal juncture. The moment was nearing when she would align her life experiences with her passion for advocacy, but only if she could silence those inner critics. Just as she was about to settle into a rhythm of focus, her phone buzzed, a disturbing reminder that distractions lurked even in her moments of profound intention. The message vibrated insistently against her palm. "Are you coming to the meeting on Monday?" Gaze locked on the screen. She felt the gravity of the moment hang palpably in the air. Was she truly ready for this public confrontation? With thoughts like those ricocheting around her mind, her heart thudded in unison with the question that loomed larger than her fears. What would she do when faced with opposition, and how fiercely would she defend her narrative? The shadows of uncertainty surged anew, unrelenting in their grip, as she whispered to herself, "What if this is a defining moment? What if my voice can break chains?" As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across her cluttered floor, Angela found herself staring at her journal with a mixture of dread and resolve. The message about the meeting felt like a shackle, binding her to the familiar cycle of hesitation and self-doubt. But tonight she yearned for transformation, not just for herself, but for those whose voices remained silenced. In an effort to harness her swirling emotions, she dug deeper into her notebook, flipping through pages filled with raw thoughts and half-formed ideas. The ink whispered back at her, echoing her vulnerabilities and her ambitions, intertwining both into a narrative she needed to present. Looking closely at the words, she noticed something. She had inadvertently chronicled not only her pain, but also her moments of resilience. With each line she reread, the realization struck her. She was not just a passive observer in her own life. She had survived the flood of rejection and isolation. They had shaped her, yes, but they had also equipped her with a unique lens through which to view the world. This revelation struck her like a thunderbolt. Her experiences were not just memories to be buried. They were the very instruments she could wield to advocate for change. Energized by this insight, Angela began rearranging her thoughts for the meeting. Instead of framing her past simply as a collection of grievances, she focused on the powerful lessons it had taught her. She typed feverishly, using her laptop as a canvas where her story could be painted with clarity and conviction. The narratives of those who had been dismissed and turned away needed her voice to break free from the societal constraints that muffled their cries. Occasionally, doubt would creep in, casting a shadow over her conviction. What if the accusations lodged against the institution didn't resonate? What if her own narrative fell flat? Yet each time these questions arose, she countered them with another revelation, that this was not her solo performance. Her words carried the hopes of many, and failure felt unacceptable. As she worked late into the night, Angela recognized a primal anxiety lurking in the corner of her mind, insisting she shelter her vulnerabilities. It whispered that vulnerability was synonymous with weakness, but Angela had begun to embrace the opposite truth. In acknowledging her own fear, she found strength, a source of truth which could resonate deeply with others. Here lay her greatest weapon, the ability to connect on an emotional level. Staring out her window at the city lights, Angela felt the pulse of possibility beating through her veins. This meeting was not merely a confrontation, it had the potential to be a catalyst. What if she could say something that would ignite the courage in others to share their stories too? As she prepared for the next day, a rush of determination surged through her. She organized her notes and practiced articulating her main points aloud, the echo of her own voice bolstering her confidence. Nearly every sentence she constructed sought to celebrate resilience, collective experiences, and ultimately a vision of justice that demanded attention. Hours passed, and as night deepened, a sense of calm began to wash over her, dispelling the remnants of anxiety that had once gripped her. She realized that she was preparing not just to defend her narrative, but to advocate for justice itself. The anticipation that had taken root in her belly transformed into something exhilarating, a force propelling her toward her purpose. Sleep eluded her when she finally retired for the night, her mind racing with potential scenarios. Would she be able to stand up firm, voice steady, and share her heart without crumbling? The question lingered like a specter, but she had a growing conviction that every challenge faced head-on was a step toward reclaiming her narrative. As dawn broke, washing her apartment in soft light, a new thought ignited in her psyche. What if this meeting became the moment that urged her to confront not only external opposition, but the very internal struggle she had battled for years? With coffee in hand and papers tucked neatly under her arm, Angela prepared to step into a world that demanded the courage she had scarcely tapped into. She breathed deeply, fortifying herself for the fight ahead, whispering one resolute affirmation: "I am not just here to speak. I am here to be heard." Just as she opened the door to leave, her phone chimed again, an unexpected alert that made her pause. It was a message from someone she had not expected. "I've been following your journey. Ready to help you make waves?" The excitement and uncertainty intertwined, leaving her with a singular, electrifying thought. Who else was out there ready to join her in this fight? Angela stepped into the lively streets, where the hum of morning traffic mingled with the whispers of possibility. The sun shone brightly, illuminating the path ahead with a golden glow that felt like an omen of change. She clutched her papers tightly, a tangible reminder of the weight of her words and the many voices asking to be heard. Each step forward felt like a tightrope walk between fear and determination, each breath a reminder of her commitment to authenticity. As she navigated through throngs of people, she couldn't shake the anticipation flooding her thoughts. The message from the mysterious sender clung to her like a second skin, stirring a mix of hope and uncertainty. Who was this person? Their willingness to support her felt like a buoy in tumultuous seas, yet the fear of opening herself up again tugged at the edges of her resolve. What if this unexpected ally turned out to be a distraction? What if their intentions weren't genuine? Angela's mind churned with questions, fighting to maintain focus on her mission. Recognizing this internal conflict, she took a moment to pause at a nearby cafe. The familiar aroma of coffee soothed her nerves as she ordered her drink. Sitting at a small round table, she glanced at the strands of her life unfolding in the crowd around her. Each passerby was a fragment of their own story. Each face reflected unspoken struggles and triumphs. It reminded her of the collective fabric of human experience she intended to address. She wasn't merely representing herself. She was a voice for the overlooked narratives etched in the silence of society. Finishing her coffee, Angela decided to respond to the message. As she typed, her fingers felt weighted with purpose, each word selected carefully to clarify her stance. "Thank you for reaching out. I'd love to connect and discuss how we can make our voices stronger together." The message sent, she realized that this bold step wasn't just about finding solidarity. It was about expanding her own view of what collaboration could mean in her journey. Emerging from the cafe with renewed vigor, Angela's heart raced as she approached the meeting location. She noticed a colorful mural painted on a nearby wall, a vivid portrayal of resilience and community spirit. The artwork depicted figures intertwined in solidarity, each brushstroke a testament to the power of unity. This resonated deeply within her, echoing her desire to fuse her personal experience into a broader narrative for change. As she walked into the building, the sense of urgency intensified. She was met with the familiar faces of her peers, each preparing for their opportunity to speak. The atmosphere was charged, teetering on the brink of something significant. The reality of the gathered crowd settled in her chest, pushing against her doubts. Would they accept her truth? Would they recognize the courage it took to stand before them? As the meeting commenced, Angela sat among a group of determined individuals, their own stories intertwining with hers. Listening to their experiences ignited a fire within her, a sense of solidarity that pushed her toward the precipice of her own narrative. The time had come to bring forth her voice, yet doubt surfaced, whispering trepidation in the back of her mind. What if she stumbled? She shook off the anxiety and took a deep breath. The room fell silent as her name was called. The spotlight shifted nervously to her. This was her moment, a window of opportunity not just to share her story, but to challenge the very mechanism that had deemed her voice insignificant. The fear clawed at her, yet the inviting promise of her newfound ally reminded her of her purpose. The power of transformation lay not within the absence of fear, but within the choice to act in spite of it. She stepped forward, ready to confront not merely the institutional barriers before her, but the lingering doubts that had long resided within her spirit. As she opened her mouth to speak, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the audience, the mysterious sender, nodding at her with a knowing smile. The moment felt electric, but Angela's heartbeat pounded with uncertainty. Would her words resonate? Would this be the turning point she'd sought? The audience leaned in, waiting for her to begin. The room felt heavy with anticipation, and she wondered if she had truly discovered the strength to reclaim her voice, or if this was yet another moment tangled with buried doubts. Just as the first words began to surface, she caught her breath mid-sentence. Was she ready for whatever would come next? Angela's mind raced as the silence enveloped the room. The gaze of the audience bore down, both supportive and expectant, amplifying her sense of vulnerability. She searched for the words that had been carefully crafted in her mind, yet they felt elusive, slipping through her fingers like sand. What could she say that truly captured the essence of her journey? As she steadied her thoughts, the familiar figure in the crowd offered her a reassuring nod. It was as if the gesture unlocked a door within her, revealing the strength that lay dormant just beyond anxiety's reach. Fueled by that moment of connection, she inhaled deeply and started to speak, her voice shaking but slowly gaining power. I stand before you not just as a participant of this discussion, but as a woman whose voice has been muted for too long. The words flowed tentatively at first, but with each statement she felt the weight of her past losses and frustrations rattle within, transforming into a fierce desire for change. She spoke about the neglect of individual stories in favor of broader narratives that often omitted the very people most affected. Angela shared her struggles with being overlooked, the quiet despair that crept in when her voice went unheard in critical conversations. Each experience she recounted was not just personal, it mirrored the struggles of many in the room and beyond. There was power in translation. Her lived experiences became a bridge to collective understanding. As her confidence surged, she looked to the mural she had seen earlier. It had symbolized resilience, but now it represented something deeper, a reflection of strength in vulnerability. The stories she shared connected each face in the room, intertwining their narratives, as if each whisper of pain and triumph built a solid foundation on which they could collectively stand. Angela realized that she no longer carried her story alone. It was a powerful epiphany, awakening a hidden competency within her, the ability to transform rejection into resilience. The shame she once felt shifted into a profound sense of purpose, igniting her sense of agency. She was using her voice to carve out space, not just for herself, but for others who fought the same battles. Yet as she approached the culmination of her speech, a nagging doubt surfaced. Would the audience rally behind her message, or would the echoes of her past still haunt her? Did she truly wield the influence she craved? She was on the brink of a revelation, aware that even as she spoke out, compassion could flare in response, or silence could settle around her once more. The final sentence hung suspended in the air, trembling with promise and potential. Together, we can transform our individual stories into a resounding chorus, one that cannot be ignored. A ripple of applause surged, merging with an uncertain tension, but beneath the applause, an anxiety bubbled. Before she had a chance to bask in the moment, her eyes met the familiar one again. The stranger who had offered her support earlier was moving through the crowd, and as they locked eyes, Angela felt an invitation in their gaze. Who were they to her now, and what path could they reveal together? As the meeting began to shift towards discussion, she felt a profound urgency to address her fears once more. In this new chapter of her life, another decision loomed on the horizon: to seek out her ally or to hold back, afraid of forging a deeper connection. Angela's heart raced in sync with the anticipation around her. What awaited her beyond the applause? Angela's pulse raced, and as the applause faded, she felt the pressing weight of the room shift. There was static in the air, thick with anticipatory energy, waiting just for her. It felt like standing on the precipice of a vast unknown, a crossroads forged from her own courage and determination. Her gaze flickered back to the stranger, still moving through the crowd. She could draw strength from the eyes that had reflected understanding, a silent promise that she was not alone. But the hesitation gnawed at her. What if this connection led to new vulnerabilities? Can one person truly support another, or would this just place another weight on her shoulders? Angela studied the contours of the crowd, noticing faces she hadn't seen before, faces full of questions, curiosity, and a newfound respect. These were not just attendees, they were potential allies, listeners, individuals who might share the weight of stories untold. But as much as the thought invigorated her, it also terrified her. Engaging with them meant exposing pieces of herself she had kept hidden, pieces that still bore the scars of past traumas. Anger bubbled up within her, hot and turbulent. Who was she to demand attention when others, perhaps more deserving, had been silenced? Yet reflection offered clarity. Her journey had led her here, and she could either grasp this opportunity or retreat into the shadows of her past. Determination began to shift her perspective. Angela took a step toward the stranger, who now seemed to illuminate the path ahead, like a lighthouse cutting through fog. Each footfall was heavy with significance, ushering her to a space where openness was no longer an option, but a necessity. This engagement was a chance to redefine not just her narrative, but perhaps the narratives of others entwined with her own. "What's your name?" she asked as she approached, the question cracking through layers of uncertainty. The stranger smiled, an invitation masked in curiosity. "It's Jay. I was moved by what you shared." Their voice was smooth, resonating like a warm breeze on a chilly day. "It's not easy to speak your truth, but you managed to connect us all in ways I haven't felt in a long time." Angela's heart quickened. It was the validation she craved, but it brought with it another enticing dread. This moment could spiral into a bond that would demand even more vulnerability. A rush of thoughts cascaded through her mind. Questions of whether she was ready for this leap, whether she could truly trust someone else with her story. Yet her past taught her that courage often lay in the spaces where fear thrived. Wouldn't she be limiting her growth if she hesitated? This was how transformation began, through connection, even amidst uncertainty. "I want to share more," Angela admitted, her voice steadying, "but I also realize that these stories will require openness from both of us. Can we be honest about our journeys?" Their nod was firm, a silent pact unfolding. With that simple gesture, warmth bloomed within her, igniting a flickering optimism for the first time in years. As Angela continued to explore the conversation, something shifted. The fear that had tightly coiled in her gut began to loosen, replaced with a profound sense of agency. But moments later, questions arose once more, growing shadows of doubt about where this thread of connection could lead. Suddenly, topics like her personal ambitions and fears surged to the forefront of her mind. Was she prepared to explore those profound secrets with someone who had previously felt like a mere stranger? What did I just step into, she wondered, her eagerness now brushed with a sprinkle of apprehension. The door to deeper engagement was ajar, but stepping inside could change everything. As discussions flourished around her, she recognized this was her moment to navigate the unknown with intention. Angela settled into a listening stance, soaking in not just her voice, but the voices of others, gathering the stories that would weave a new fabric of connection. But as Jay began to share their own journey, Angela found herself hanging on every word. How much of their own experiences might echo hers? The stakes had never felt higher. Would facing this turning point forge an even brighter path ahead, or would it unleash the very vulnerabilities she had fought so hard to overcome? It was a decision made not through fear, but through the realization that true transformation awaited her. One filled with potential and peril, intrigue and challenge. The time had come to uncover what lay beneath the surface of their relationship. What would be revealed as they ventured deeper into each other's truths? Angela leaned slightly closer to Jay, her heart racing as they both surrendered to the flow of conversation. As the room faded into the background, their shared stories echoed as a testament to resilience. Jay spoke about their childhood, moments of self-doubt, struggles for acceptance, and flashes of courage that sparked a yearning for change. Angela couldn't help but resonate with the candid revelations, each word he uttered acting like a mirror, reflecting her own tribulations. Yet with each story shared, Angela felt an invisible weight shift. What if her past was not a defining essence, but rather a tapestry of experiences that could interlace with Jay's? This thought galvanized her courage. She could choose what fragments of her own story to unveil, shaping the narrative on her terms. "I've always felt trapped by my story," Angela said, words flowing with newfound resolve. "For years, I let fear write the script for me. But standing here, I realize it's time to take back the pen." Jay's eyes sparkled with encouragement, and Angela found herself drawn into the depths of this project she hadn't even realized she desperately needed. A collaborative unpacking of both their narratives. With each shared experience, it felt as if they were stitching together threads they had always thought were too frayed to weave. This was more than just vulnerable talking. It was creating something new, a foundation of mutual understanding. As they conversed, Angela felt a surge of energy sparking within her. Here was an opportunity not just for personal revelation, but for crafting a shared vision of what could be, a space where dreams, fears, and truths coexisted harmoniously. She looked at Jay and saw a possibility. Could they perhaps use their experiences to empower others? Each exchange felt like a step toward a larger purpose, a purpose that went beyond their individual struggles. But along with this spark of hope came a flicker of doubt. Was this really a direction Angela was ready to commit to? What if this bond evolved into something that demanded more emotional labor than she could handle? She gulped, letting the questions wash over her as she wrestled with the implications of their budding relationship. The energy in the room shifted subtly. The others around them began to notice the gravity of their exchange, eyes subtly drawn to the shared connection Angela and Jay had ignited. It felt like a beckoning call, a quiet agreement. They were standing on the edge of something transformative. What if Angela's revelations sparked a movement within herself and others? "Can we create something together?" Angela finally asked, the question hanging in the air with an intoxicating thrill. "I mean, a platform for other voices, a space to share and uplift. We could encourage vulnerability in a way that inspires action, not fear." Jay nodded slowly, clearly pondering the prospect. Angela's idea felt audacious yet necessary, a chance to mold a community of courage through storytelling. That sense of urgency propelled Angela forward in her thoughts. She felt time slipping away, each tick resonating with the need for action. Motivated by the legacy of those who had come before her, she sought to transform her fearful memories into elements of empowerment. But as the conversation continued, Angela was struck by the uncertainties that lay ahead. The notion of stepping fully into this initiative filled her with excitement and dread in equal measure. Was she prepared for the backlash or the questions that might arise from unveiling these hidden layers of her life? Those questions lingered heavily in her mind, nudging her to consider whether the very act of building this platform would stretch her too thin. The line between pursuit and self-preservation trembled before her, challenging her to search deeper within. The time had come for a decision, one that could either unlock new pathways or throw her into a whirlwind of chaos. She looked into Jay's eyes once more, realizing this was not merely a journey shared. It was the dawn of a new beginning, a challenge to discover what was hidden beneath the surface of their personal connections. Could they, together, face both the shadows of their pasts and the spark of what might emerge from their collaboration? In that moment, Angela understood this was her moment to embrace not just a partnership, but the unknown, a leap into uncharted territory where both potential and peril awaited. Taking a deep breath, Angela prepared to venture into the next layer of their conversation, knowing they were ready to carve out a new beginning. What awaited just beyond their current interaction? As the weight of their conversations settled in the air, Angela's resolve solidified. Jay's encouraging demeanor ignited a flicker of determination within her. She could visualize the platform they could create, an oasis for sharing and healing where vulnerability turned into strength. However, the elation of the moment was quickly overshadowed by the specter of her self-doubt, whispering insidiously, questioning the feasibility of their aspirations. "How do we even start?" Angela mused, her voice steady yet laced with uncertainty. The question hung heavily between them, a blend of hope and apprehension. "I mean, the logistics, the audience. I can't deny it feels daunting." Jay leaned back slightly, seeming to absorb her words. A slight smile creased his lips, but even in his confidence, Angela found herself ensnared in concern. What if their idea faltered? What if the world was not ready for their truths? Those thoughts churned like an unsettling breeze inside her, like a storm gathering strength. "You know," Jay began, his voice thoughtful, "it's not about the grand scheme right away. It's about authentic connection, sharing our truth little by little. It's about finding our voice before we worry about how to amplify it." His words struck a chord, grounding Angela amidst her chaotic thoughts. The idea that greatness could stem from simplicity pulled her closer to the edge of her ambition. As she contemplated his insight, snippets of previous failures surfaced in her mind, the moments she had shied away from expressing her true self, dismissing her stories as unworthy. She had often succumbed to the pressure of conforming. Perhaps in this endeavor, those past rejections could morph into foundational stones rather than stumbling blocks. Could she turn that disappointment into a mosaic of resilience? Angela took a moment, feeling the intensity of the inquiry clawing at her thoughts. "You're right," she replied softly, her voice regaining strength. "But how do we ensure our voices don't get drowned out by negativity or fear?" The question was pointed, aimed at the heart of her anxieties and those outside factors that loomed ever-present. Jay's expression turned serious, the glint of ambition in his eyes. "We start by surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us. We seek allies. We look for individuals who share that desire for authenticity and vulnerability. Together, we can solidify our stance, gradually building a network of stories that resonate. Right, Angela responded, her heart racing with the rhythm of newfound possibilities. Together, we create an environment where raw honesty can pave the way for trust. She felt their ideas intertwining, forging a path that was now ripe for exploration. As the conversation deepened, Angela began to sketch out specific strategies, envisioning workshops and discussions that provided a safe space for expressing the narratives that shaped them. With every detail, she could feel those old fears attempting to seep back in, testing her dedication to this venture, yet the prospect of crafting something tangible outweighed the shadows of doubt. Just as they were concluding their initial strategies, a sense of nostalgia washed over her. Angela remembered the disheartening moments when she had been rejected, seen as less than because of her background. How could she possibly turn those memories into a gateway for others? But now the question morphed from a whisper of defeat to a compelling drumbeat of resilience. "Let's not only share our truth but help others navigate theirs too," she proposed boldly. "We can be catalysts." Jay nodded, excitement brightening his features. "Yes, let's pull others into this journey, the shared stories, the support. It's about creating a chorus of voices." Angela felt the adrenaline coursing through her as Jay's words ignited a harmonious chord in her heart. A feeling of empowerment swept over her, compelling her to step closer to the precipice of her capabilities. This was what she needed. The very rejection she feared had become the fuel for her burgeoning passion. But as they discussed logistics and next steps, a sudden apprehension crashed over Angela. How far was she willing to push herself? Would revealing her inner struggles lead to greater vulnerability or exacerbate her fears? The tension in the room shifted. No longer was it simply about collaboration. It was about confronting the reality of her expectations and the sacrifices involved. Angela stared into the depths of Jay's eyes, searching for answers among the swirling uncertainties. "Are we ready to take this leap, Jay?" she asked, her voice trembling, yet charged with anticipation. "Because I know the commitment we're making is more than a project. It's a revealing of our souls." His steady gaze met hers, and in that moment Angela realized this was more than just a partnership. It was about forging her identity through collective vulnerability. The question loomed large and urgent. Would she allow herself to be fully seen, and in that visibility would she find the courage to thrive? In the silence that followed, Angela felt the enormity of their decision weighing down. What lay ahead was uncharted territory, each step carrying the potential for both exposure and liberation. It was a test of her willingness to navigate the treacherous waters of acceptance and the richness of vulnerability. As they prepared to outline the framework of their initiative, Angela could sense the air thick with anticipation and dread. She was ready to dive deeper, but would the depths reveal more than she was prepared to face? Every heartbeat echoed the silent question. Were they ready to transform rejection into their greatest opportunity for growth, or would they falter at the threshold of vulnerability? The next chapter of their journey awaited them. Angela stood on the precipice of her transformation, and with fierce determination she exhaled the weight of her past. The fear that once clung like a shadow began to lift, revealing a clarity she had never known. Her collaboration with Jay, initially just a spark of hope, blossomed into a vibrant force ready to take on the world. Together, they began to structure their platform, a sanctuary for authenticity and courage. Every plan they sketched unfolded with purpose, driven by a shared belief that stories could serve as both catharsis and call to action. Angela dove deep into the logistics, coordinating events that brought individuals willing to share their truths into a single space. Each conversation propelled her forward, erasing the boundaries of isolation that had once defined her. As the launch date approached, they received enthusiastic responses from potential participants eager to share their experiences. Angela felt an exhilarating rush. This was not just her voice, but a chorus of many. The anticipation electrified the atmosphere, each step toward their debut feeling like a monumental achievement. No longer just a receptionist shuffling papers, she had formed a community of advocates bent on amplifying their collective voices. Yet doubt still lingered in the corners of Angela's heart. Would they truly resonate? Would their platform withstand the scrutiny of society? The moments of vulnerability, where they shared their fears and triumphs, were woven into the initiatives they created, assuring participants they were not alone. Through these dialogues, Angela discovered a reaffirmation of her purpose. Writing had been a step, but now she had transcended into a role of leadership. On the day of their launch, the air crackled with excitement. Angela stood backstage, the vibrant hum of chatter reaching her ears. Participants filled the room, eager to share. As she prepared to step onto the stage, she caught sight of a familiar face. Her grandmother's portrait, the figure who had inspired her from childhood. In that instant, Angela recognized that every emotion, the pain of rejection, the doubts of worthiness, had led her here to this moment of resolute empowerment. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, her presence commanding the stage. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice steady and unwavering. "Today, we're not just sharing our stories, we're reclaiming our narratives. This is a space for every single one of you to express your truth, a melody that cannot be silenced." As she spoke, the applause that erupted wasn't just a response to her words. It was a celebration of courage, resilience, and the act of pushing against society's narratives that sought to stifle them. The shared stories that flowed from the stage were powerful testaments to individuality, colliding to form a transcendental wave of hope. With each heartfelt story shared, Angela felt a contagious spirit of affirmation wash over the room. They were breaking chains of silence together, creating a space where vulnerability fueled strength, a vision she had dared to dream only months before. She was no longer standing alone. In the days following the launch, the platform grew exponentially. Stories poured in from those she had never met, and the online community blossomed. Angela discovered a new joy in her growing connections, her hesitations transforming into solid confidence. Each conversation validated her journey, not just as a writer, but as a leader and advocate. As a true testament of her transformation, Angela received recognition from local organizations eager to collaborate, using her platform as a model for advocacy. Invitations flooded in for speaking engagements, as her journey turned into an inspiring narrative of resilience that others longed to hear. In one meeting, an organization discussed partnering to expand her platform beyond the local community. Reflecting on the woman she had become, once small and caged, now filled with solid confidence, Angela reveled in her achievements. She had conquered her fears, transformed rejection into purposeful advocacy, and established herself as a credible voice fighting for justice. She took a moment to cherish the culmination of her hard work. The scars of her past had shaped not only her journey, but the journeys of countless others. Angela had achieved a depth of fulfillment, recognizing competence in being both a leader and an advocate. Emerging from self-doubt was now her reality, defined by the truths she had shared. In that moment, she acknowledged that not only had she written her own narrative, but she had also become a guiding force in the narratives of many. With every story shared, she forged connections that resonated deep into the fabric of society's collective consciousness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Angela opened her eyes in gratitude, knowing she had truly become the champion of her cause and a beacon of hope for all. A fulfilled woman carrying the legacy of her ancestors, Angela stood poised, ready to embrace whatever came next. If you resonated with Angela's transformative journey, you need to subscribe now to catch more incredible stories like hers. This is the moment to acknowledge the power of personal overcoming and show your support for the channel. Leave a like now to help us feed the algorithm. Don't hesitate to comment your thoughts and reflections on the ending, and be sure to share this emotional video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your engagement is crucial in amplifying voices that matter. Don't wait even one more second to share. Join the movement.